So today we're going to talk about technology around filtering and protecting our users using DNS, right? And we have our longtime partners, DNSFilter, with us today. Probably have been partners for almost 5 years, I would say. Maybe Mikey and I first launched this maybe 4.5 years ago. So exciting stuff. Lots of awesome features. We've seen with DNSFilter over the years, probably still the top ranked and superior DNS filtering product out there. But before we get started, real quick, um, anything we show here, any forward, thinking topics or features, uh, you know, don't interpret that as a commitment uh, by Enable, but most of this is all about DNSFilter, so not really talking much about anything Enable does. But right before I hand it over to the DNSFilter guys, just wanted to talk quickly about why this is important. So we have a case study we're working on, actively working on, where a customer implemented our NDR technology, was actually working on implementing that. They didn't yet have logs from the firewall. They didn't have DNS data in all that type of telemetry coming in yet into the SOC, and a breach happened. So it's very, very important, right, to not overlook or be stingy when it comes to layering your technologies, right? And we also know, on top of that, that and I'm sure Mikey will talk about this, but from a compliance standpoint, right, we're really seeing regulatory bodies force us to implement these types of technologies. So, having said all that, just kind of wanted to set the stage. Working together for a long, long time. Exciting stuff. Always exciting stuff from DNSFilter. What I'm going to do is pass it over to Dan first, and then he's going to introduce Mikey. But again, welcome, guys. Really looking forward to listen to Mikey talk. He is the expert on DNS technologies, in my opinion, in the market. So take it away, Dan.
Thanks, Jay. Really, really appreciate that. Hi, everyone, and welcome. First of all, thank you for joining us today. My name is Daniel McLean, and I'm the Director of International Sales here at DNSFilter. And realistically, what that means in relation to our meeting today is, similar to what Jay said. I've also had the privilege of watching this partnership grow over the 3 years, and I've actually been with the company. So this is a fantastic turnout today. I'm sure you've already figured out what we're going to be talking about. The title kind of gives it away. But our objective is to really go through a fundamental component of the security stack. And, again, I'm not here to steal Mikey's thunder, so I'll be handing it over to him in just a few moments. But I really wanted to point out that with our strategic partnership in place, we can ensure that all Enable customers and partners, which is essentially all of you, can benefit from and leverage Protective DNS. Jay's already mentioned it. Protective DNS adds so much value to the network and the endpoint with real-time data and analytics. I'm sure you can appreciate that that is essential in any modern day security stack. Ultimately, if you know what we're referencing here, DNS is ultimately a very basic and fundamental piece to everything that we do online. We're in a very interconnected world today. The internet is an essential tool, but it's also a significant source of risk. Every single click, every website visit, every online interaction and transaction, these all start with DNS requests. So with that being said, I think we're actually in a good position to kick things off, and we should run a little poll. What the objective here is for us to gather some insights from our audiences here today, and this will help guide the session as well. I'm going to hand it over to Mikey. Just before I do, I really encourage everyone to participate in this poll. So please take a few moments and run through that. And without further ado, I'll hand this over to Mikey. Mikey, the stage is yours.
Ooh, that's scary. You guys sure you wanna turn the stage over to me? Well, thanks for the intro, Dan, and thank you, Jay, and the Enable team for having us. We're really excited to be here, to kind of, connect with the Enable audience that we don't get a lot of chance to chat with. So we have this poll running, what best describes your, current DNS strategy? And I can see the majority of the results look like relying on EDR firewalls, not using DNS filter. So that's really what we're here to talk about. And we designed this poll in a very specific way to kind of highlight the difference between content filtering, which is a lot of what people think about when they think of DNS filtering, but there's also a threat protection piece that not a lot of people kind of understand. And we're going to kind of dive into that today and touch on some content stuff too. So, my name is Mikey Pruitt. I am the partner evangelist here at DNSFilter. I really appreciate all you guys being here. Use the chat. I'm sure this is being recorded, and if you're not here, hi. You'll probably get this link in an email. But if you are here, please use the chat to say hello. Where are you from? What is your participation like in the Enable ecosystem? Tell us what you're using. And also, there is a Q&A feature here in GoToWebinar. So use that. We'll save a few minutes at the end to answer some of those questions. And I realize some of those questions might pop up as I'm kind of going through stuff. So let's get started. I'll be walking through first, like what fits into a modern security stack. Not just technically, but really more the strategy behind it. DNS filter can help you identify when your clients need DNS filtering, even if they haven't really asked for it. That's kind of a big pain point with the MSP community. It's like they're not asking for it because they don't know. You're the expert that they're looking for. And finally, kind of how you can benefit from selling DNS filter. Now, before I jump into all this DNS filter stuff, I'm going to take a few minutes just to go back to the basics. And some of you may find this as a very rudimentary recap. So apologies for that. I'm not trying to turn anyone into a network engineer, but I do want to give a refresher on DNS, just kind of understand it a little bit. So every time you type in a web address like dnsfilter.com that's shown here, DNS is what turns that into an IP address. So it's kind of like the GPS system for the internet. It tells your device how to find the right server, and that's anywhere in the world, wherever it happens to be. So what you're seeing here is a breakdown of the domain name. www section is a subdomain. DNS filter is the second level domain, and then .com is a top level domain or TLD. So it's very simple, but behind the scenes, DNS is handling billions of these lookups every day, and this happens in milliseconds. Um, so because DNS sits at the front of every connection, it's also where attackers love to hide. And that is exactly why DNS filter exists. So I'm going to go one layer deeper. So when you call someone, you don't dial their name, you dial their phone number. So with DNS, it's the same idea. DNS is the system that translates a domain name like DNSFilter.com into an IP address, like we see here. This is the machine readable portion, and that's what the internet actually routes to. So the part on the left is the network ID, part on the right is the host ID. And that's the host ID is kind of like the house number, and the network ID is kind of like the neighborhood. So there's an important part that this translation happens constantly, not just when you open a browser. So every application, this GoToMeeting call, every operating system, all the background services firing on all of your devices are using DNS all day long. So on average, you're going to make about 5,000 DNS queries today. And here's the kind of spoiler alert, about 100 of those are going to be malicious or spam. So this means DNS isn't just a utility, it's really that vulnerable point of you connecting to the outside world. And it's also often the first step in phishing attacks, malware downloads, and data exfiltration. And based on the poll that we just saw, it's often overlooked, but it's also a very powerful place to stop attacks before they even start. So here's what a typical communication looks like behind the scenes of a DNS query. So when a device makes a DNS query, starts by asking a recursive DNS resolver. That's like the middleman. And DNSFilter, we are basically become that middleman in this communication. So that resolver might talk to multiple other servers. We've got the root level servers. We've got the TLD servers. Those are the .com, .orgs. But eventually we get to the authoritative server, name server, and that is the final answer of what that IP address actually is. So that whole conversation takes place in milliseconds and happens billions of times per day. So this is where DNSFilter steps in. Instead of just answering the query, we filter it. So every DNS request gets run through our threat detection funnel. We check the domain's category, we identify the user or the device that made the request, and then we apply the right policy, which is a block or allow based on rules that you set up. And we do this at massive scale, about 250 billion queries per day. And we do it in real time and we don't slow anybody down. In fact, DNSFilter often speeds up your DNS resolution, your basically the internet experience for your users. And that's what makes DNSFilter more than just a resolver. We're really an intelligent security layer. So are there any questions about how DNS works? Or can you just type in the chat, thanks for the recap, but no thanks. I'll know to keep that part out of the next one. Let me see here. Oh yeah, clap. Smiley faces. Oh, there's emojis in here. Very cool. I'll have to watch out for those emojis. So yeah, DNS recap. Sorry about that, but it had to be done. So now let's talk about where threats really start, because it's not where most people are looking. So about 78% of threats involve the DNS layer in some way. So they're not at the endpoint, not at the firewall. It's DNS, which means it's out on the wider internet. And that means before an attacker lands a payload, before ransomware encrypts anything, before phishing tricks a user, there is a domain query, a simple DNS request. And that's where we live. DNSFilter stops that very first question and answer session before the browser even loads any malicious code. So we inspect, we filter, and we block malicious domains in real time across every user and every device. And this happens on or off your network, which is very important for the current world we're in. So so think of DNS like as a bouncer, like you're at a nightclub, bouncer checking IDs at the door, and we're basically saying, no, you're allowed, no, you're not. So the cool kids get in, which are the good domains, and the bad guys have to stay outside. So most stacks lean heavily on device or application layer tools, patches, firewalls, according to our poll at least. They're looking at secure web gateways, and these are all important. So, DNS filtering generically is not some silver bullet that's going to stop everything. The layers are still important, but looks like a lot of you are missing a key layer. So DNS is the front door. So I'm imploring you today to lock that first. And that's what we're really talking about. So let's get into the how and what makes DNS filter different than some of the others on the market. So we give you that lock to put on your front door. We are also the fastest DNS resolver in North America. And I should have put this on the slide, but you can go to a website called DNSperf.com while I'm talking. I think it's .com. It might be .net. But go to that while I'm talking and look at the domain resolver speed, and you'll see that DNSFilter is usually number one fastest resolver in North America, and usually number two behind Cloudflare in the world. So we are competing on a world stage with just raw speed. And this is the part where other vendors get a little bit more nervous. So DNSFilter, our domain intelligence engine is constantly crawling. We're classifying, we're learning from all of the domains that we're seeing. We're scanning the internet and analyzing over 950 million domains, 1 million new domains per day. So that's what we're adding on to our intelligence corpus. So we can validate and every 2 weeks, we recategorize the entire known web. So we have very up-to-date information about each domain. And because we're doing the heavy lifting ourselves, we do still ingest dozens of third-party feeds, but we can validate the noise, we can reject false positives, and we can surface what others miss. So the result of that is that DNSFilter catches threats 10 days faster on average than the competition. So that is 10 days faster, which is a lifetime in cybersecurity. And I know you don't believe me yet, but I'll show you a little example in a minute. But 61% of the threats that we block, they're totally unique to DNSFilter. And you won't find them on DefenseX, Zscaler, Umbrella, or your firewall's feed. They're invisible, on average 10 days to everyone else and until it's too late. So we apply layered analysis. We do safety checks that exclude major domains like Google and Amazon. We have structural heuristics that detect sketchy websites and even image analysis to uncover impersonation attempts and fake login screens. This is like the fake Microsoft logins that you would see. And we actually just did a significant research, which you can see on our blog, where the Typhoon 2FA malware was discovered to be using, I think, 65 root domains, which translated into almost 11,000 subdomains. Now, of course, we blocked all of them, categorized them as phishing or malicious in some way. But these were very targeted attacks, and I encourage you to read about that on our blog to see exactly what the bad guys are doing and the intelligence that we get just by running a very high performance DNS resolver. So all of it is powered by a mature machine learning model, and that only gets smarter with the more traffic that we have. So while others are still waiting on threat intelligence feed to trickle in, our engine is already blocking it. And that is the DNS filter difference. So we're always on, we're always learning, and we're always fast. So this is the proof section. I'm curious, did anybody balk when I said we're 10 days faster on average? Let me know in the chat or an emoji smiley face if you thought I was full of BS. So I'm going to show you just one example. So let's look at this one. This is a text message that I got. This was a smishing attempt posing as a US Postal Service. So it's not like a super spy technique, but it checks enough boxes to trick someone who's distracted or in a hurry or uneducated on these type techniques. You and I probably wouldn't be tricked by this, but unfortunately, the people that we're trying to protect maybe. So this is kind of a sketchy link included in there. There is some fake urgency. There's a suspicious domain. It's a .top, which is, no one, I would never click on a .top. I'm sure most of you wouldn't. But they're trying to say that they promise this is not a trap. You've gotten messages just like this. Maybe it was a toll that you had to pay. Your package is delayed. Your PayPal account has been compromised. Something like that. I actually got a message this morning from my neighbor who was asking how to get access to this domain in her browser, and she sent me a screenshot. Apparently, she was tapped for jury duty, and she got a text message about it and a link to click on. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Don't click that. Jury duty is not going to send you a text message. She's like, but I got an email too. And I said, hold on, don't click anything. Don't click anything. Bring it to me later if you're still curious. Wait for something in your actual physical mailbox. But anyway, back to my example here. So I got this fake text message, and what I did is what I always do. I went to DNSFilter.com. I logged into our backend to see what we flagged it as, and that was phishing and very new domains, which is a strong. Both of those are strong signals that this domain is malicious in some way. DNSFilter thought so. So new domains are often registered and they're kind of weaponized really fast and they have a short lifespan. So DNSFilter gets a gold star. Now the next day, I wanted to see how the industry stacked up. This is 24 hours later. The virus total, which is probably a website most of you are familiar with, shows that 4 of the industry leaders are agreeing with DNSFilter that this domain is somehow malicious. Now that's 4 out of nearly 80 security tools. They saw nothing wrong with it. And these are names you'd recognize. They're the biggest brands in the business. So DNSFilter was already protecting customers. Everyone else was kind of behind. So then I wanted to see what this domain looked like. So I safely pulled it up in an isolated browser, and this is what someone would actually see. And it's not a bad fake. There's some they're using the real logo. It's got some legitimacy for social proof, like links out to their the USPS social media accounts. But clicking anything here, which I didn't do, is probably going to ruin someone's day. Now, 48 hours later, Google Safe browsing caught on. The site started triggering the big red warning screen. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this, but Google was getting signals that this domain is bad. But you could actually click through to still visit it. And then finally, 2 days later, the rest of the industry starts to catch up. 20 vendors are now flagging this up from 4. So remember, DNSFilter caught this on day 1. And then lastly, I guess the registrars or the browser vendors in conjunction started redirecting this page to the real United States Postal Service website. So, the browser vendors and registrars basically saved the internet. This campaign was essentially done. And here's what matters. The phishing domain could have been hosted on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, which all could have helped avoid its detection. And this happens a lot. The attacker could have rotated IPs, could have updated the infrastructure behind the domain, but that domain stayed the same the entire time. So think about phishing attacks like a marketing campaign. You send text messages, emails, you do like social posts, and then you're really kind of have one goal. It's to drive people to a landing page of some sort. So you can't change the address of the landing page in the middle of the campaign. And that's why DNS layer protection works. So we block at the source, the domain, before malware touches the device. And DNS filter in this case gave our customers a 48-hour head start. So most of us on this call, again, probably wouldn't be tricked by this. But this exact domain got 144 requests before it was taken down on just our network. And we serve about 1 or 1.5% of the world's internet traffic. So we saw 144 hits. So the entire world probably saw much more than that. So even though we wouldn't click on it, people actually did. And this is just one example, one real attack that happened to me just in time for a presentation like this. And this is just one out of the millions that we categorize daily. Again, 10 days faster than the competition. So DNSFilter isn't new to this. We've been blocking threats since 2015. This is long before AI became a buzzword. We are trusted by over 40,000 organizations. We resolve more than 2 million DNS queries every second. I don't even know how many that is since I've been chatting here. Our threat intelligence team delivered a new stat just yesterday. So we identify and block nearly 1,000 typo squatting domains every day, which I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So those are the domains that add a similar looking character, like 2 V's instead of a W, to trick people into clicking, make the link look good. They also use different alphabets to make domains look the same. So we're all under attack every day. DNSFilter blocks 5 billion unwanted or malicious DNS queries every day, and we do it 10 days faster. So our threat detection is powered by AI, and we are enhanced by partnerships with groups like the Internet Watch Foundation. These are the people that categorize and track child exploitation domains, and CTIRU, which is a counterterrorism organization who maintains a corpus of domains that are associated with terrorism activity. So we're really helping stop the worst of the internet in real time. And the best part is it's really easy. So it's easy to set up, it's easy to manage, and there's no bloat and there's no nonsense. And that's why teams choose DNSFilter and why they stick with us. So I've got one more slide, and then I'll do a short demo, and then we'll get to some questions. So I'm curious if we have anything in the chat that is relevant. What site is that? Let me type it in the chat here. Let me just do a little Google search. DNS perf. So this is the website that tracks the DNS resolvers. So I'm going to go to public DNS resolvers. We're slipping to number 5 in the world. So we need to speed that up. But if you go to North America, we're usually 1 or 2. Yeah. So very fast DNS resolution. And that is a website called DNS perf if you want to check it out. Great question. Thanks, Michael. But yeah, ask any other questions you have in the chat, in the Q&A box, in the chat, say hello, see what you're doing. But again, this slide is really kind of tying it all together. So because unfiltered internet access isn't just about malware or phishing links. And I know I started with DNSFilter is all about threat protection, but there are some other risks that people don't consider all the time. So some of the threats are obvious, others not so much, but they can be just as damaging. So let me give you a few examples from our customers. So a national, how do I say this? 5,000 retail store chain. That's like a hint. I can't say the name of the company. Came to us after customers were accessing inappropriate sites on the public Wi-Fi in their stores. So they were kind of embarrassed, and they kind of had a reputation of their brand on the line. So DNSFilter was brought in to help them block that content and keep their family-friendly image intact. So another example, a large, this is another one I can't say, but let's just say a chocolate company uses DNSFilter at their remote offices where bandwidth is scarce and it's also expensive. So they block Netflix and YouTube and prioritize business critical apps, and they avoided costly network upgrades because the employees were using the fast, free to them internet at work to do, surfing and watching TV shows and things like that. And here's another favorite of mine. An MSP technician noticed some creative browsing on company time. There was some gambling and adult sites during work hours. I don't know who does that, but people do it. Instead of escalating it to HR, they actually just blocked the access with DNSFilter. There was no drama, no awkward conversations, just the results they were after. And they did see a productivity bump. So we've seen customers use DNSFilter to reduce shadow IT by blocking unsanctioned apps. We have a feature called App Aware that I'll show briefly in the demo. And then you can secure IoT devices that can't run on antivirus. So you can give a subnet on your network a very specific policy. So you have all your IoT devices on a VLAN, you can give them a very strict policy so that they can only communicate with the domains they need to. You can also lower cyber insurance premiums with DNSFilter by checking the boxes that they're going to give you. So the bottom line is this unsafe and unregulated internet access creates a lot of business risk across brand, bandwidth, security, and compliance. So I know we're all answering those insurance questionnaires these days. This will get you past a lot of those check boxes. So answer in the chat, what kind of risks are your customers looking to reduce? Like, what are they telling you when you have these conversations with them? And while you guys are answering that, I'm going to jump to a demo. And if you have any questions during this demo about very specific features, let me know. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, maybe 10 minutes, and show you the DNSFilter platform in action. So first, we're looking at this overview page, which gives kind of a snapshot of what's happening. And I want to point out this box up here. So I am in the MSP version of our dashboard, which is what all of you would have. And in the MSP dashboard, you can do some global things. You can do them in one place. So that way you can administer many organizations underneath you. Again, there's that overview snapshot page. And I'm going to click into a global policy. So here is a policy we have set up. I'm just going to go through this one. We have some categories, 39 categories, which are very broad. There's a there's a lot of domains in these categories, and this is kind of how you block large swaths of domains you don't want people going to. So you can see this is the average, I would say, of what we see customers blocking. They're blocking terrorism and hate. There's some really nasty stuff in that category. We can block weapons. We can block Gen AI tools. Don't do that. ChatGPT is awesome, but you can block that if you wish. Some people have, certain circumstances where they need to block things that are different than others. We can block gambling sites, adult content. And again, these are not malicious in some way, but they are things that may be time wasters or harm your brand in some way, and they could be blocked there. I'll click over here to Safe Search. This is Safe Search can be implemented on most major search engines, and you can do it via DNS, and we can do it for you through our system because we are, again, your DNS resolver. Then we have our threats categories. So these are, again, large swaths of domains that we are categorizing. We're ingesting a bunch of data, and we're using our own AI to filter out the noise and make sure that these are all actual bad domains in some way. So we have three categories I wanted to point out here: very new, newly observed, and new domains. So these are all ways to block domains that have just come out. And again, the names are bad. DNSFilter, we're not great at naming things. We're working on it. But you can block domains that were just registered, and that's really important. So you can do it within 30 days. You can do it within 48 hours, I think this one is. Yeah, 24 hours. And then this newly observed is this is the first time we've seen the domain. So depending on your security posture, will kind of determine which of these threat categories you want to enable for blocking. And I want to point out one more, this translation sites. So why would that be some type of threat? Because you can actually subvert DNS filtering in, say, translate.google.com and load any other web page within a translation site. So again, depending on your security posture, you may want to block those from your employees or staff or users. Then, of course, we can block botnets, malware, phishing domains. Um, Typically, we encourage you to block all of these or as many as you can. I kind of understand where you can't block translation sites all the time, but another important thing is to educate the user base on how to be better, safer internet citizens. So this is our app aware feature, and this is what I was talking about when I said you can block certain applications. Here's one category called messaging. Just wanted to point out in here is TikTok. So the interesting thing about applications is they are using DNS. So by severing the DNS connection, we can make them not work, not installable, or not operational if they are already installed. So like, for example, TikTok is actually made up of thousands of domains. So we can group them together and give you a simple button to click that can sever that TikTok connection for all of your people using this particular policy. So then we get into very granular. So the categories, content and threat categories are very broad, app aware, a little more specific. And then we have our allow and our block list, which are very specific. So you can block TLDs here. I'm going to go to the block list. So you can see here I blocked zip. So this is blocking all .zip domains. And I don't know if you've heard of that TLD, but Google came out with .zip maybe a year ago, maybe a little more. But you can actually block all of those because they can be real tricky for people to click on. So you can block full TLDs, you can block domains, root domains, you can block subdomains. So you can block things like images.facebook.com, but allow facebook.com. It's a little tricky doing things like that, but you can do it, be a little bit more surgical with the allow and the block list. Now I want to go to these advanced extra settings. So with DNS, you can actually block advertising. So we know a bunch of ad domains, a bunch of tracker domains. These kind of work hand in hand. If you've ever been to like a news website, usually they're covered with ads. And if you have some type of ad blocker on your browser, they can not work. They can say, hey, this is how we make money. Please allow our ads so that we can continue to operate. But with DNS, you can't block those. But we do have a moderate and a strict version of each of those, because maybe you want to go to the New York Times website or some other website. So the moderate gives a little bit more leniency towards allowing those ads and those trackers so things don't break. Again, we're working on the trade-off between convenience and security. So then we have park sites. You can block that. This malicious domain protection category is what I wanted to call out. So this is what's called a DGA, domain generation algorithm. It kind of look domains that look like a cat typed on the keyboard, clearly machine generated. These are often spun up because they're available and you can do it really fast and not have to worry about clashing with something. So the bad guys will spin up domains or perhaps typos of a domain that can then be detected by a DNS filter using some of our newer algorithms. And then you can block sites that we don't know about or are uncategorizable because there's no content, no information about them. And then lastly, I want to point out this Internet Watch Foundation, Project Arachnid. This is blocking child exploitation domains, and you cannot unblock that. Very cool. Real quick, we have a thing called universal lists. This is a block and allow list that applies to everyone, regardless of what policy they're on. You can do that in one place. You as the MSP can actually customize your block page. So you can give your company logo or some type of message to the users of that particular policy, some information. And I'll preview this real quick. Let's see if it works. In this, here it is. So this is kind of what the blank block page looks like. But I wanted to point out this form here. Oh, sure. So this form gives the user access, or they can request access. And this it kind of sends an email and it can get piped to anything that you wish so that you can pull it into your PSA tools or your support system. So that way you can kind of triage request accesses or some way for people to communicate with you. Like if you're the MSP, an end user is not going to really have a direct line to you, but that is one way that they can. So that kind of summarizes the policy. And I wanted to point out there's a bunch of policies here, and these are all global, meaning they're available in all of your sub organizations. So these are all of these sub organizations. These will be your clients. Um, you can create policies that are unique to a client if you wish, or you can just create policies at a global level and deploy them on uh, specific clients. So I'm going to show you two things in the deployment section. This is again at the MSP level. So this is a global view. We can see all of the sites that are deployed. And a site is like a network. So this is your, you're changing the DNS forwarder IPs of DNS to DNSFilter in your router, some type of network equipment on the device itself sometimes. But you just change the DNS forwarders to use our DNS resolvers and then give us like a password essentially, which is here we go. The password is essentially the domain, or sorry, the WAN IP address. So you have to have permission to traverse on DNSFilter's network, and your WAN IP kind of acts as that password. And that's just where you would enter that. And you can enter multiple of those. If you have a large network with multiple WAN IPs that may be using egress, that may be used for egress. So you can add all of those. So at this MSP level, you can see all of the sites, administer them here. And then the other deployment method for DNSFilter is our roaming client. So there's a lightweight agent for Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Chromebooks. The Chromebook one is a browser extension. It's used a lot in education for our education customers. So there are many ways to deploy DNSFilter. And here at this level, you can administer all of them, see all of them, and you can install the roaming clients like one-off, but you can definitely use the enable tooling to give your automation access to all the things you need. The secret site key, I'll show you that. So I'm going to select an organization and it gives me a key. Oh, Mac OS. Where did that go? Well, there is a key essentially that pops up um, when you're not in a rush. And that key is kind of the password again for the roaming clients. And all of that can be set up in your enable tooling to deploy the DNS filter agent. So I have two more things I want to show you here in this demo. Reporting. So depending on how you deploy DNS filter will determine the data that you get back. So here we're looking at a very high level, very high level stats. Let me actually go into one of the sub organizations, which has a slightly better view. Here we go. So this organization using some high level stats about what they're doing. These are their sites and how they are the traffic that they're sending. Get a pretty graph. But in this section, we can kind of slice and dice to see what is happening. So right now I'm filtered by domains, but I can also group by users. So we can see what person did a thing. And each of these links in this table is like a sub report, a detail view of that particular person or endpoint. So you can get very detailed about what a specific person is doing. And you can also see the same kind of view with applications. So you can see what type of applications are being accessed on the network. And then the last thing I want to show you is the query log. So this is the raw DNS queries let's get rid of the filter. What's that? Hold on, let me switch again. This is our demo account. We don't always have data in there. Okay, sorry, there's no data. But so this is like a raw DNS query log. It's going to give you the FQDN, the time, the category that the domain was, and the action. Was it allowed or blocked? But there's only a handful of columns here that you can actually see, but you can export all of this into like a CSV or something of that nature. But more importantly, you can actually integrate this with, where is it? Oh, hold on. You can actually integrate all of that data flow into a SIM of your choosing, like Enable's new Adlumin MDR. So you can take all of that raw DNS data and pipe it into Adlumin, which can then be used to collate things together to understand what people are doing on your networks and trigger alerts of suspicious activity or correlations of suspicion. So we integrate with a bunch of different SIMs. If you use a different one, you can certainly do that too. But you can also integrate with this generic event collector with the Adlumin product from Enable. And that is kind of all I have for the demo and for questions. We'll bring Jay back on and see if we have any questions that popped up during the presentation, during the demo. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, this is awesome. I tell you, I learned a couple things and I've demoed this product before. Isaac, yeah, we'll get some documentation out and some data sheets and some other things for sure. But I learned two things today. Did not realize that TikTok that my daughters use all the time calls out to thousands of domains. Oh, that's frightening.
Yeah. Twitter has even more, or X has even more than
Oh
them.
my goodness.
TikTok.
And the blocking of TLDs, that's interesting. I did not know that either. I could see how that could be definitely valuable for sure. Can DNSFilter help reduce email spam and phishing?
Well, that's actually yeah, that's a great question. So DNSFilter does not work with email or ingress traffic. However, if something makes it through your email or spam filters and a user were to click on something malicious or blocked by one of the categories that we've identified, then they would not be able to see anything. They would just see that block page instead of, the aftermath of what is behind that click. So it's more of an additional layer of email security than the actual filtering of email. Well, good question.
Yeah, good question. And on that topic, Mikey, so I'm an MSP. I have 10 clients. Um, I can create a unique block page for each 10 of those clients, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see people kind of in two camps. So do you want to give the client kind of their own experience on their blog page, or do you want to give them the MSP experience? So like you could have the logo of your MSP there, or the logo of their company. So it's really up to you. Like, but we make both possible, and there's a lot of other customizations you can do if you want to go a little further down the white label rabbit hole. You can, customize the email, domain that the emails are sent by, like, transactional email type of stuff. So your users may not want or you may not want your users to get emails from we use a generic domain name for that type of thing. It's called netalerts.io, but you can totally change that to be an email address that you control. And there's other things you can do with white labeling, like if you have people that want to access the say you have IT staff on site at a client, you can actually give them access to their specific organization and give them fine-grained permissions. Like maybe they're allowed to adjust policies, and then they can triage those access requests and things like that. But they can't touch anything else. Or you can give them a little bit more access and give them the ability to deploy and add sites, things like that. So it's really up to you based on the needs of yourself and your clients.
Yeah, awesome. So really good one from Jonathan. Definitely knows what he's talking about here. So we're going to talk about competition a little bit. So software, right, that comes with our firewalls, right? Cisco, Meraki, et cetera, et cetera. How does DNS filter compare to those? Does it replace? Does it layer on top?
So in this case, I think DNS filter would be like an augmentation layer. So we have data that no one else has. And that was what my story was about the spam message that I got, the spam text that I got. Um, so we knew before Cybersecure, Unify, and Meraki that that domain was malicious. I know it might sound crazy, but we just have intelligence that no one else does, and we ingest the same intelligence that they all do as well. So we have exactly what they have and more. Um, Now, I wouldn't. You're not gonna DNS filter is not going to replace your firewall. Like, don't do that. But an additional layer, or perhaps a replacement of some of those features, may be good. So if you think of if you had if you're paying a subscription for the filtering capabilities of Meraki or whatever, maybe you don't need that, and you can just use DNS filtering, and then you can administer all of that in one place in the DNS filter dashboard instead of for each network. So it's really a combination is encouraged, or what I would encourage. And this is also a good place to point out there's a company called Zorus. ZorusTech.com is their domain. And DNS Filter recently purchased Zorus, probably about, I don't know, 2 months ago. It's pretty fresh. So Zorus has some really good technology that works on the endpoint. And then they have another piece that is kind of a reporting piece that gives you very detailed information about like first, you can block IPs and URLs in addition to DNS to domains. Then you can understand what a user was doing, like what applications and how much time they were spending in them. And in the very near future, all those capabilities will be combined into DNS filter. That's probably maybe 3 or 4 months away. Definitely by the end of the year is what I'm hearing. But yeah, that technology is going to get folded in, and be a really, capable system for kind of a more of a one-stop shop, for your network, layer filtering kind of on top of your firewall. But yeah, great question, which we get a lot. It's, don't get rid of your firewall, but also add DNS filtering. And we have a 2-week free trial, so you can try it out and cancel it. We don't care. That's fine. We're confident that you're gonna like it. So you can just trial it, see what it does for you, how it is to operate with, and go from there.
Yeah, and it's really easy to set up, right, Mikey? So, like, he mentioned this, right? You have the agent deployment, but you also just the basic network deployment, you're talking minutes, right? Like, you can set this trial up in minutes.
Yep, absolutely. So the RMM configuration is like, hey, here's where the download is, and here's that key, and then just go. And you could deploy. Um, I'll tell you the 5,000 retail box store example that I used. They just used the network filtering, not roaming clients, but they converted 5,000 stores to use DNS filter in less than 30 days. That's a lot.
A lot. Yeah, you tell a network engineer that you gotta do that work, right? Like, oh, yeah, it is. For sure. Okay, any more questions? So before folks leave, we've got one last, uh, survey here. Definitely, hopefully, you wanna learn a little bit more about DNS filters, so yes, please, please. Um, yeah, and again, I've been working with DNSFilter for over 4 years. Used to work for MSP that actually managed ISPs, so know this technology very well. Knew other technologies before I ran into DNSFilter, but um, it's just a very, very important layer that we often overlook, right? But thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Mikey, as always, the greatest evangelist out there in the MSP space. And to Dan as well. Appreciate everybody. Have a great rest of your week. And we'll definitely send some things out to everyone. Thanks.